show you. Okay, so we're back. I'm going to do problem number 5. I've set it up on the board here. This is what you had in your book for problem number 5. Big Bucks Bank has reserves of $22,000, checkable deposits of $100,000. If the reserve ratio is 20%, what is the amount of excess reserves? Well, on $100,000, they have to have $20,000 of reserves. They have $2,000 in excess reserves. They can lend that $2,000 out. So in column 1 and 1 prime, what does that look like when they make that loan? Reserves stay at $22,000 because the cash stays in the bank initially. Loans go to $42,000. Securities stay right there at $38,000. Okay, so this is increased by $2,000 because we made the loan. Over here, we gave whoever borrowed the money a checking account on our bank. So now checkable deposits have gone to $102,000. Okay, $102,000, $22,000, $38,000, $42,000, and everything balances on both sides. Then in part B, how much has the supply of money changed? It's gone up. This is the money supply over here. Cash in the bank is not part of the money supply. Remember that. Checkable deposits went from $100,000 to $102,000. So the money supply is increased by $2,000. How will the balance sheet appear after checks are drawn? So the $2,000 is now spent. People wrote checks. People cashed those checks, put them into other banks. Checkable deposits go back to $100,000 over there. And over here, $2,000 of cash is taken out. Those other banks that received those checks said, we need you to cover these checks. So reserve went down to $20,000. Securities stayed the same, $38,000. Loans remain at $42,000, and that adds up to $100,000 in column 2 and 2 prime, $100,000. So that's what number 5 should look like for parts A, B, and C. For part D, they want you to redo the whole thing, assuming that it is a 15% reserve ratio. You, in your homework, should redraw this whole thing. I should see number 5, part D, all over again. Reserves, securities, loans. I'm going to do it in red now, so I'm just going to erase these amounts that we had for part A, B, and C. And we're going to do it, what if there's a 15% reserve ratio? They're required to have $15,000 in reserves. They have $7,000 of excess reserves, and they can make $7,000 of loans. So this now goes to $47,000 of loans. $22,000 stays in the reserve. And of course, the securities stay $38,000. And we give $7,000 checking account. So now we have $107,000 in checkable deposits, $107,000. And then the $7,000 is drawn out. So reserves go down $7,000, subtract $7,000, we get $15,000. This stays at $38,000. This stays at $47,000. And over here, the $7,000 goes to other banks. So we're back to $100,000 in checkable deposits. And the two sides still balance out. $100,000 over here, $100,000 over there. So that is number 5. I'm going to do number 6 now. I'm going to pause. Okay, here's problem number 6. I've got on the board what you have in the book there, the consolidated balance sheet of the entire banking system. So there are many banks in here, and multiple deposit expansion would occur anytime a loan is made by one bank that would be deposited at another bank, would be able to keep some money and make more loans, and et cetera, until it worked all the way through the system. So it says, what is the, suppose that the reserve ratio is 25%. So 25% of $200 billion is $50 billion. They have $52 billion in reserves. They have $2 billion of excess reserves in the system. The money multiplier is 1 over 0.25, which is 4. So 4 times 2, they can make $8 billion of new loans. So 100 billion of loans becomes 108 billion of loans. 108 billion of loans. Checkable deposits become 208 billion in checkable deposits, and 25% of 208 billion is the 52 billion in reserves, and of course the securities stay put at 48 billion. All right, so that is part A. What is the excess reserves? 2 billion, the maximum amount the banking system can lend out. 8 billion, show in column 1 and 1 prime how the balance sheet would look after the money has been lent. We now have 108 billion in loans, 52 billion in reserves, which stay in the vault, and $208 billion in checkable deposits. What is the size of the money multiplier? It was 4. B, answer the questions assuming a 20% reserve ratio. So erase the blue here. We're going to assume a 20%. On your homework, again, you should have this whole setup repeated a second time down below here. And the second time, we have a money multiplier of 5. So we have 20% of 200 billion is 40 billion would be required reserves. We have 12 billion in excess reserves. 52 minus 40 is 12 billion excess reserves. We can lend out all that 12 billion. So this goes to 112 billion in loans. That stays 52 billion in reserves. 48 billion, of course, stays in securities. This goes to 212 billion. And if you divide that out, 20% of 212 billion is 52 billion. We're right at our required reserve ratio. So that's the answer to number 6, part B.